Hey everyone, welcome to Automation Guild 2021. My name is Shriram Krishnan. I'm the Vice President for Australia New Zealand region at ACCELQ. With us here is Guljeet, Nagpaul, our Chief Product Officer, also at ACCELQ. Hey Guljeet, how you going?
Hey Shriram, and hi everyone. Hey Joe, thanks for having us back again.
Yeah, thanks Joe, thanks for the invite. I hope to come back again if I do okay this time, yeah. um, so guys, today we're going to talk about full stack automation, right? And some tips on how we can set it up for success. Yeah, to start, uh, Gulji, do you want to set a bit of a context about, test automation journey and the history and all of that? You got enough gray hair to have some war stories there.
Yeah, for sure. Let's look at kind of the evolution of the whole automation as well as the technology stacks around it, how if it is evolved. I mean, oh gosh, this automation's been around maybe for 20 years, and along with technology in the past 4 decades or more, has obviously evolved. To where we are today, right? So if we kind of just quickly go back in time, right, it'll help us understand what got us here, and then it'll give us maybe a better perspective to kind of look for what is the most optimal way to go about it, right? So if we go kind of really long back, much before my time also, Shriram, right, in the stone age, so to say, right, when we started out with the basic and the COBOL and the mainframes of the world, right, to the evolution of the web technologies, and automation tools obviously evolved along with how the application stack evolved, right, with record and playback, and a lot of different open source tools coming into play, handling different technology stacks, right? And then obviously with the evolution of multiple channels, may it be mobile, APIs started becoming more and more prevalent, right? They did start out with more so on an integration standpoint, but obviously now with microservice-based architectures, they started becoming more and more prevalent, right? And again, automation technologies to support kind of faster release cycles, may it be agile in sprint, that kind of evolved with various different technology stacks. Mobile coming, and now we see, especially in the last year, to all the what the whole world has gone through with everything kind of remote, and kind of the digitization almost being on steroids in the past year or so, right? All of these kind of multiple channels becoming more and more important, and full stack automation has always kind of lurked around in the past decade, but I believe it's the need of the hour now for for most organizations.
Yeah, absolutely, man. See, I mean, see, I don't go back as far as basic, I suppose, right? So I probably learned it when I was in primary school, maybe, right? Uh, but having said that, so QTP was all the rage because it was all record and playback. When that was the big thing to do, then a lot of the API tools came in, and like I said, we got more in Selenium and the other ones. We have tools that can handle various items in a full stack, right? But I feel now is the time where that full stack automation has become almost a need, right? And one of the reasons I feel is because of the increased focus towards customer experience, right? Where nowadays it's not looked at as separate, discrete experiences, whereas we're thinking more about like a seamless flow for a customer. Like last month, one of the customers had the scenario where they want to let their users go to their website, they put their details in, sign up for a free trial, right? So on the back of that, they get sent an email to automatically activate their trial account, right? There is, when this process happens, there's something that gets some of the details and leads and etc. gets created in Salesforce, and also then they have their own product itself, which they want to create a sandbox of and set it up appropriately. When the customer is activated it, they want to go there, right? And the thing is, now this whole flow has now become automated. Whereas if you go back a few years ago, it would have been you ask for a trial, someone manually goes and contacts you, manually sets it up, but the flow itself is automated. What that means is now the testing of the flow needs to be fully automated in the same way, right?
Yeah, for sure, man. I mean, and behind the scene to the flow, what you just described, what's really happening is, your web's taking care of maybe the certain front end process automation aspect of it, but behind the scene, right, there are multiple different technology stacks in play to really fulfill that end-to-end business process, right? It's, it's making several API calls. It may be going to a cloud based database where it needs to do certain interactions, some messaging queues, different calls in play there, right? As well as kind of coming back and doing validations against an expected outcome, right? We can't forget that aspect. It's not really just about automating an end-to-end flow, but also validating to an expected outcome, right? So having kind of all these pieces so that one, we are able to automate that through, but then easily be able to validate all of the expected outcomes as the process flows through this various technology stacks. So yeah.
And see, all these we got all these different items to stack, and now they're all changing so rapidly, right? So with agile and DevOps and continuous delivery, what we're finding is we're updating the web page that I said that gets refreshed almost once every 2-3 days, right? The Salesforce, there are new features added, new fields, and new plugins, etc. added almost on a weekly basis. So everything is changing so rapidly. And what becomes essential is that we need to have that full stack automation in place to give us that confidence that the customer experience isn't impacted, right? So that's I think that's the crux of why we really need that full stack automation, right? But then, um, yes, the need is here. Are we ready to meet the need? Right. So it does come with the fair share of challenges there, right? To get it going.
Yeah, for sure, man. There are challenges, right? And especially to the aspect of what we were talking about in terms of how we've gotten here, right? So the way our technology stack has evolved, right? The way APIs have pretty much kind of gained the importance in our application architecture, right? Fortunately or unfortunately, what has happened is teams around each of these technology stacks have been working in silos, as well as the technology stacks related to those teams, have evolved pretty much in silos as well, right? And that makes it all the more challenging for an end-to-end full stack automation flow to be able to automate in a seamless manner, because my API test team is going at it completely in a separate manner. And especially the way specifically APIs and some of the microservices and how they've evolved is the traditional notion has been, let's just do request response and unit-based testing, and that would make it robust enough. But in essence, now these are pretty much spinning together the complete business logic, right? And we got to look at that aspect in terms of how to approach full stack automation to counter that challenge, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So like each of those teams now can, because of the, every team is empowered to do whatever they need to do to be more sufficient, right? Which is great, right? But then it's also sometimes becomes slightly counterproductive when it comes to the whole intern kind of picture, is you kind of lose that visibility and you kind of lose those threads that kind of connect the teams together, right? So a team A, like you said, who's building the web may not really even be able to reuse some of the API ones that are being built by team B, right? Where in a full stack, that's what all they need to chain in, right? So that's something that has been a challenge, right? With all these disintegrated frameworks. And also a lot of these test cases, when the teams build them, they are like a use case on their own. They're not really cross-invocable. They're not able to be fitted into a chain, right? Inside and outside. So that's been a challenge.
Yeah, and not to forget, the technical and the process aspect of the challenge. But then, if you think of how UI and how much maturity the UI automation has gone through in the past 20 years, so to say, right, to get to that, what we call it, the regression maturity,
Yep.
right? This full stack is pretty far from that, and especially because of the technical nature of each technology stack, right? That regression maturity is far lacking, even though API testing in itself may have been around for a long time, right? But that regression maturity to be able to achieve that end-to-end validation is lacking big time. And what I mean by regression maturity is all aspects of kind of, the coverage analysis, the traceability, right? Being able to have robust suites that you can press a button and which can validate your end-to-end flows for your releases, right? Within a sprint, having a dependable regression suite, which is, somewhat resistant to kind of changes, being able to not have to do always the change impact analysis as you scale up your automation. So all of that regression maturity aspects should be carefully looked at, because there's no point having a good seamless technical flow if you can't relate it back to, to what is important for your upcoming release, right?
Sure, you would bring up your management side of stuff, right? It's okay. I think just do automation. That's done. Right, joking, right? But I know we kind of making it sound all doom and gloom, right? But I don't think that's the case. So we were we are honest when we said that we're going to give some tips on how we can set it up right, and it's quite simple, right? So you have a challenge, then you just go come up with a solution for how you solve it, and the first solution is build integratable frameworks, right? So that's our first suggestion is when you're building any you choosing a toolkit, a framework, a tool, whatever you are using to automate a piece of your functionality, make sure that you can build it in such a way that it can plug and play in a chain, right? So it must be able to invoke other frameworks or tools. It must be able to be invocable, right? So it must be able to operate in mode, both an head mode and also a headless mode, so to speak. Yeah.
Yeah. And then, by the way, it's never doom and gloom for you. I mean, by the way, for everyone who's watching, that's not a virtual background. That's really where he is. We are in the middle of winter. Most of, at least majority of us.
Yeah. It
But
is.
yeah,
Man, I enjoyed my day at the beach just a couple of days ago, I tell you.
there you go. So yeah, apart from kind of being able to seamlessly handle this end-to-end flow, right? It's got to have one of the most important aspects as you all look out for solution for full stack, right? Is out there is the way our technology stack is changing at the pace it's changing. It has to be adaptable and extendable to something which constantly changes, right? In UI world, it may be Angular 3, Angular 5. Tomorrow, it's going to be something else, material design, right? Some niche, European charts that you use for your dynamic applications in the databases, right? It's Mongo, Postgres, already people are talking about kind of, Cosmos, CouchDB hosted on kind of Azure or AWS of the world, right? Other technology stacks within mobile are constantly changing. It's Flutter, tomorrow it's something else, right? So it has to be something which is easily extendable, which is something, now it has to be aligned to the way technology is consumed today, right? Which means it has to be powerful, it has to be flexible, and I shouldn't be dependent on a whole lot of kind of, commercial aspect of technology, so that I can actually extend what's in my control. So that's an important aspect to consider, when choosing the right framework or the solution. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely, right. And so you build it flexibly, you build it integratively, but let's not forget data, right? We got to make sure that all of these different pieces that you build, you can pass data through them, right? So, in one step, you're going to be creating, like if we refer back to the example before, in step one, you're going to be using, say, a randomly generated name and email address to sign up for a trial. You need to be able to pass that data to your Salesforce automation suite to verify that that lead is created correctly, right? That product request is created correctly. And same details, you got to make sure that is created exactly in your product, in their databases, right? In that message in the MQ or your Kafka is actually got that exact information that you probably you kind of, put in the first step. So you got to make sure that data can flow seamlessly through your framework.
Yeah, and I'm gonna put my management hat again, and the regression maturity, man, it's really important to have that whole life cycle linked together, because
Yeah.
you've seen it so many times, especially how we've evolved in the other testing aspects, right? Is we master each sub phase, right? But without kind of linking each one of them together, you kind of lose so much on the efficiency, because at the end of the day, it's all about doing all of this faster, right? And if we can't link it together to have an easier way to have a handle on what my upcoming release is, what I really should be testing to be confident that my release quality is aligned to what I really my customer experience needs to be. That then it's an aspect that needs to be considered almost as equal to kind of, how you're choosing your framework in terms of technology, right?
Yeah, and sure, all of these, but your basics still apply, right? Build always think, build modular, build reusable, build data driven, right? So build it in such a way that you can run it across different environments, right? So parameterize it, configure it, right? So all of those has to underpin whatever you're building.
Yeah,
But these four are kind of like the main things to keep in mind when you're trying to look at building something full stack, right?
yeah, yeah.
So
So, Shriram, how about we do this? You reckon that we look at an example of, you know, how a full stack in a way can be accomplished, which we can maybe share with the audience here, so that they can look at kind of what a realistic scenario could look like.
sure, absolutely, right. So I'm going to show a sample scenario using ACCELQ, and Guljeet, you can actually guide me, right, what you want to do, right?
I was
Um,
just thinking
and
about it. How about we use one of the ones that we recently had with one of our healthcare customers, right? Where we pretty much start out, and since that's something which has been so important in the past year, and we've seen it so much. Most organizations are going through that kind of a remote adoption, right? How about we pick a use case where we need to go and validate a pharmacy refill, like an RX refill, and then go through the complete process of keying in to a patient system all the way through kind of validation of that prescription order. How does that sound?
something like that.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's good. Let's start out right from the get-go, right? From a pharmacy standpoint, if we think about it, the first step really in putting in that order is going to the patient system, right? So starting out in pretty much, not in the most of the modern of applications. If you think about pharmacy, typically pharmacy would be like on a thick client or an EBA, Oracle EBS kind of platform, right? From
Yeah,
there on, searching for the patient, because pharmacy, you would always fill in a prescription for a particular patient, right? So
right.
searching for the patient info maybe.
Search for patient info. If only I can type as well as we can automate.
Yeah, that's great. And then how about starting out creating a new RX, right? Creating a new prescription for that patient, right?
This
Once
is
you have the patient searched by their first name, last name, what have you,
Yep.
creating the new RX and then filling it in, right? So going through the complete workflow as a pharmacist to filling in that new prescription, right? So filling a new RX and then filling the new prescription. So maybe
So
filling the
we're
prescription
still
details.
staying in the Oracle suite. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
this is still the whole workflow is happening in a thick client. And then validating, getting the order number, right? Once it is generated, getting that order number.
Yeah. So the after the prescription, so do we go to the mainframes to get the order number? So we do the pharmacy update, and then we go
Yeah,
and get the order number.
yeah, just like
There
you
you go.
know
Back to UBS again after updating the pharmacy, and we have the order number. What do we need to do
Yeah.
next?
And now the downstream systems need to get in all this information, which now we are going to go from a stone age of mainframe and EBS straight to maybe a Cosmos DB hosted in your cloud. So maybe order checking in a Cosmos DB so that my downstream systems and my downstream processes can get kicked off, right? Maybe, filing claims or maybe customer notifications or what have you, right? So maybe checking in the order in a Cosmos database.
Yep. And then we're gonna verify it using API as well, if I remember correctly. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, totally. The downstream processes have kicked off, but like we were talking about it, right? That it's not just about accomplishing an automated end-to-end flow. It's also validating against an expected outcome. So let's verify using that patient account ID and all of those information we've gathered against an API, right?
Yep. And I think we so the order also goes into Kafka, doesn't it? So we'll verify it in Kafka first.
Yeah, verify in Kafka, right? Which is basically creating a topic and then consuming that topic, right? Consuming the Kafka message to really verify whether those downstream systems have been initiated with a more modern MQ-based system, right? And this can obviously change, right? Some of your organizations may still be on IBM MQ, RabbitMQ, Kafka, right? So again, that extendable and adaptable nature has to be there, right? So that it can quickly adapt to kind of whatever is the flavor, right?
Oh man, give me some UI. This is all very
That's exactly where it goes. So tracking the order, initializing the dashboard, which goes again, back to your favorite Angular app,
yeah.
right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
initialize.
This is more, modern. I know Kafka is modern, all of that, but still, there's nothing like a pretty web page. Maybe just
Yeah,
and
that's that's
recorded
that's
it.
the that's the Australian in you talking. So yeah, I get that. So let's track the order from the web front end, right, through
Yeah,
the Angular app. So tracking the order and valid, and that's pretty much it, right? We can go on and on. I mean, the real flow, by the way, also includes kind of getting in a mobile notification for a customer, and that's actually a real use case what we're looking at for a healthcare organization, right? And Shriram, if you don't mind, I think going into a couple of them, like maybe showcasing how the logic of that can seamlessly be automated. And I see here that the flow you've just stitched together also has data which is linked together. So I see information being passed from one system completely over in the same flow to the second. So you reckon we can look at kind of,
yeah,
maybe
absolutely. Right. So let's just first go with some tick marks. So we want to make sure that you can integrate different components, right? So you see, you have a common interface. Like here, our interface is all simple actions, as we call it, right? You just can plug in whichever action after wherever. Right. So that's the first thing that we talked about. Right now, the extendable nature of it. Once again, say this is searching patient info, which is built on an Oracle EBS app, right? But then it's built in such a way that you can change this to maybe if you want to do your searching for patient info through an API sometime in the future, you can still modify that and it will still plug and play inside, right? So that's how, so whatever framework or toolkit you choose, make sure that it doesn't conform you tightly into a certain way of doing things, right? Because we know it's going to change, right?
yeah,
So now you can look at these, say, even the mainframes, right? I think this is going to stay forever, right? So I'm going to retire on that real beach out there drinking what do I drink. That mainframe still would be there. So yeah, just make sure
yeah,
that it is extendable like that. Now, when we talked about passing, data along, right? Let's just say, see the first name that we use to search patient info is also required in, say, step 7, right? Which is to step 6, which is to perform the update in the pharmacy database. Right now, there is a new order number that's being generated. Right now, that order number needs to be passed into Cosmos DB. Right. Let me just go there. And this is from step 7. Let's just go take the output. That is the order number. Let's pass it in. Right.
yeah,
Now, it's the same way you want to actually, there's a patient account ID that comes out of Cosmos DB, which you want to pass into the API. Right. So this is how, when you build that framework, make sure that you keep in mind that you should be able to pass data across those steps. All those data, it should support different formats, right? It's never going to be just the same format. So it should be smart enough to be able to figure out, sorry, just let me make sure I'm taking the right one. Yeah. So you get the drift, right? So we can just change this as we go along. And
yeah.
that way, that name is used in the update of the pharmacy. That order number is what you check in the Cosmos DB, the API, in the Kafka, right? Etc.
And like you always, like you earlier also mentioned, don't forget the basics, right? So has to be data driven, has to be modular so that you're not over creating your test cases, right? You're
Yeah.
data driving them. So the basics have to kind of still remain, right? So all of the basics you did in all other automation, that kind of still sticks, right?
Yeah. So you got Guljeet, old man, that's your last name, right?
I'm not the patient here.
You will be at the end of this, right? So, so you can add multiple test cases, right, like this, and you name them, etc. So this is the what we mean by make sure that you can actually do it in a data-driven fashion, right? And Guljeet, you're gonna go into your, you're gonna wear your management hat again, and you're gonna bring the other one.
Yeah, if you can showcase a couple of tie-ins to my story that's coming up so that I can quickly look at the sprint and really see what I should be testing. So if we can have that, right?
All right.
Um,
So this
you
is
know,
link it to Jira, your Jira story. So
yeah, both for my APIs and my web front end, right? Because I'm gonna have different stories. That's just how my development teams are organized, right?
yeah. So it's Jira as an example, but obviously whichever kind of tool you
Yeah,
use,
Azure DevOps, Jira, what have you. Yeah.
keep in mind that you can link them, right? So that way you get that kind of end-to-end holistic kind of view, right? So that is, I suppose, in summary, right? Just to reinforce how to get, full stack going, right,
Yeah.
in a successful fashion. Build integratable frameworks, right? Whatever you build, right, whatever your toolkits or products you choose, just make sure that they can all talk to each other in an integrated
Extendable.
fashion. Yeah.
Yeah. They're extendable so that they can adapt to your changing technology landscape. Yep.
Yep. And number three, data, 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 right? Make sure you can pass data across all your steps. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. And the regression maturity. Don't forget the regression maturity. You've learned so much for your other testing. Bring that in. Bring
Yep.
it home.
Absolutely. And all of that underpinned by your basic concepts, right? Make sure that they are reusable, built in a modular fashion, data driven, etc. Yeah.
Yeah, and the full stack, the focus, if it's still kind of unit based test, the full stack is going to give you so much more validation to that customer experience that's going to change your release quality and kind of the underlying the pace of your releases.
Absolutely. Um, all right, that's it from us. Thanks for having us. Hopefully, you learned something, and please reach out to us if you do want to talk more about this.
All right, thanks for having us, Joe, again. Thanks.
Thanks, man. Thanks, everyone. See ya.